In the quiet, historic streets of Providence, Rhode Island, there's a place that people tend to avoid. It's a derelict property on Benefit Street, a house that has earned a reputation for bringing nothing but misery to anyone who dares to live within its walls. Locals call it the Shunned House. It isn't just a matter of the building looking old or decaying. There's a persistent foul odor that seems to cling to the air around it, and a history of misfortune that is hard to ignore. People move in, and then they simply waste away. The narrator of this story remembers the house from his childhood, specifically the cellar. He recalls a terrifying sight, strange, phosphorescent, quasi-humanoid fungal growths that seemed to thrive in the damp darkness. It was the kind of thing that stays with a person, a memory that lingers long after the actual event has passed. As the narrator grows up, the mystery of the house becomes a matter of scientific inquiry rather than just childhood fear. His uncle, Dr. Elihu Whipple, is a man of science, a venerable physician who believes that everything, even the most unsettling phenomena, has a rational explanation. He begins to investigate the house, trying to uncover the cause of what he calls an insidious decay. The pattern the doctor finds is consistent and disturbing. The victims of the house don't die of traditional diseases. Instead, they suffer from sudden, rapid anemia. They experience a mental decline and a physical wasting that defies medical logic. But it's the behavior of the victims that is truly unsettling. Some have been known to attempt to bite doctors, and others have begun babbling in French, a language they have never studied and have no connection to. To understand the why behind this decay, Dr. Whipple and the narrator turn to history. They discover that back in 1697, the land was home to a French Huguenot family known as the Roulettes. The family was the victim of a violent, localized riot that drove them from their home, leaving their ultimate fate a mystery to history. This is where the story moves from a standard ghost story into something much more complex, something that fits the unique brand of cosmic horror H.P. Lovecraft is known for. The narrator begins to form a hypothesis. He suspects that the horror in the house isn't a traditional ghost or a biological vampire in the sense of a creature that eats flesh. Instead, he thinks it's something more abstract, a vital force, or a multidimensional energy left behind by the intense hatred and violence of the Roulette massacre. It's the idea that human emotion, when intense and concentrated enough, can leave a predatory, non-material imprint on the very fabric of space and time. To test this theory, the uncle and the narrator decide to conduct a scientific vigil in the cellar. They aren't going in with crosses or holy water, they're going in with modern physics. They bring a Crookes tube, a device used to detect energy-based entities, and they bring flamethrowers, just in case the entity turns out to be something physical. The night of the vigil is oppressive. The air feels heavy, almost thick. As the hours pass, the atmosphere shifts from mere tension to something truly unnatural. Dr. Whipple, despite his lifelong commitment to reason, falls into a restless, agitated sleep. While he sleeps, he begins to mutter dark, mythological curses in French. The entity's influence is already working on him, beginning to bridge the gap between the physical world and whatever is lurking in the shadows. Then, the laws of reality seem to buckle. The narrator describes a nightmare of geometrical confusion, where the very sense of time and space begins to dissolve. Out of the floor emerges a monstrous, pulsing, semi-liquid entity. It isn't a solid creature, but a gelatinous mass of eyes and mist. It's a nightmare of shifting forms. In a horrific climax, the entity consumes Dr. Whipple. But it doesn't just kill him, it consumes his identity. The doctor's face begins to morph, shifting through a kaleidoscopic array of different faces, including members of the Harris family, who had also died in the house, before his entire body liquefies into a pool of greenish, oily grease. The narrator manages to escape, but he isn't finished. He's driven by a desperate need to end this cycle of consumption. He returns to the house alone, convinced that if this thing is an exotic, vampiric emanation rather than a solid creature, it can be neutralized with chemistry. He digs a pit in front of the fireplace in the cellar and uncovers something truly stomach-turning, a massive, translucent, cylindrical mass of putrid jelly. This is the heart of the entity. In a final, desperate act of confrontation, he pours carboys of sulfuric acid into the pit. The reaction is violent and sudden, a greenish-yellow chemical eruption that seems to tear at the very essence of the thing. When the reaction settles, the entity is gone. All that remains is a pile of harmless grey powder and some withered, dead fungi. The house eventually returns to a state of eerie normalcy, the predatory evil finally buried under the weight of chemistry and will. When we look at the Shunned House, it's easy to see why it stands out in Lovecraft's bibliography. It's a story that sits right on the edge between the superstitious and the scientific. The characters aren't trying to exorcise a demon, they're trying to use a Crookes tube and sulfuric acid to solve a problem that defies the known laws of physics. It explores the limits of human reason, the idea that there are things in this universe that we can observe and even measure, but that we simply cannot comprehend or control. There is a heavy theme here regarding the persistence of hatred. The story suggests that our most intense emotions don't just vanish when we die. Instead, they might leave a permanent predatory imprint on a specific location, a kinetic pattern of trauma that continues to feed on the vitality of the living. It's a terrifying thought that the violence of a massacre in 1697 could still be siphoning the life out of people in the 20th century. This leads to the idea of biological versus metaphysical decay. The horror in the story isn't just the presence of death, but the siphoning of vitality. It's a transition from being a biological, living being to becoming a source of energy for something else. The use of the French language is a brilliant touch here. It acts as a linguistic marker of otherness. When the victims start speaking French, it's a signal that an intruder from a foreign, non-human reality has entered their world. It's a displacement of the present by a violent past. The ending is particularly striking because of how it resolves the conflict. Most horror stories end with the monster being slain or the hero escaping. Here, the hero essentially performs a chemical disposal of a metaphysical entity. It's a desperate attempt to impose order on chaos, to use the tools of the modern world to combat an ancient, energetic horror. In the end, the story leaves us with a very unsettling realization. Even though the narrator succeeded, the horror of the Shunned House suggests that some evils aren't creatures we can hunt or kill in the traditional sense. They are simply emanations, echoes of past atrocities that linger in the corners of our world, waiting for enough life and emotion to manifest once again. It's a reminder that the past isn't always behind us. Sometimes it's just waiting in the cellar.